My name is Brad Molander. This is my final project for Case Studies in Management Ethics with Professor Michelle Mendenhall. So the question I'm going to pose today is, how are we going to make education better in Oklahoma? Uh, I don't think there's any denying that we're in a bad situation in Oklahoma. Uh, we're going to start off with teachers. Teachers are third lowest teacher pay in the country. I think that's unacceptable. Our cost of living is very low in Oklahoma, where we're somewhere around third or fourth on the list. Some of our neighbors were right around the same area. Uh, so, so we should be able to compare cost of living and pay, to a couple of our neighbors, Arkansas and Kansas in particular. Texas is a little harder to compare to, even though we share a border with them. They're a much larger state. They got a lot more people to pull taxes from. Uh, So teachers are key. This is what I'm talking about. Teachers first. Teachers are key in bringing kids into the education. They're the ones that are going to administer that education. They're in the classrooms. Experienced teachers who want to be there and educate the children are going to make the education worth it. Spending the money on facilities is great, and we need to upgrade some facilities, but it's not going to do us any good to have a shiny building with no teachers or fancy new computers with nobody to show them how to use it, or with nobody that cares to show them how to use it. So the best way for us to promote, to encourage, to make our education system better in Oklahoma is first going to be to take care of our teachers. Uh, I believe the median pay was around 42,000 a year. The starting pay for a teacher was 31,000 without a doctorate. With a doctorate, 34,000. Those numbers sounded insane to me. I cannot imagine going to school. Fellow students, you can feel my pain. Uh, and and only coming out earning $34,000 a year with a doctorate. That doesn't sound like it's going to encourage teachers to become educated at a high level and to be passionate about education in Oklahoma and to stay here. Not when they can go across the border either direction and automatically get a 10, 12, 15% increase in pay and only have a 2 or 3 or 4% increase in cost of living. So we have to do something about teacher pay. Uh, well, teacher pay means we need to increase funding. So what are we going to do to increase funding? Well, 51% is, okay, I got this backwards. The state budget, 35.8% of the state budget goes towards education, which sounded insane to me. But we can't go and take from higher education. It's going to rise the cost of college in Oklahoma, which kind of defeats the purpose of having those teachers stay here. You want to raise the cost of their education and then give them higher pay when they come out. Kind of seems like a moot point. Also, the other big budget item was healthcare. You don't want to take any money from healthcare. We have people in Oklahoma that are below the poverty line. We have a high poverty rate. We've got to take care of the people in our state. So health and education were the two biggest spenders. I was pleased to see that. It's not something that I think about on a regular basis, but it kind of makes me wonder how we can do better. So I started digging in a little bit. Where does the funding go? Well, for local schools, 51% of funding comes directly from the state. There was another 11% or so that said it came from other state funding. I was a little fuzzy on that, but either way, that totals up to 61%, 62% of total funding for local schools comes from the state budget. 28% came from property tax, 11% from the federal government. I've never understood property tax being a kind of a key factor. I always thought it was the big determining factor. Obviously, it's the state spending, uh, but it seems like low income areas are going to have lower cost housing, lower property values, lower property tax. So you're kind of perpetuating that poverty cycle where people get stuck in low income jobs, low income housing. They pay low property tax. They get lower funding for their schools. which is, creates a situation where they don't get a good education or drop out, and then they're in poverty. And so, generational poverty we're talking about. And that's just another thing that we've got to try to prevent. And more funding that's not related to your income or not related to your property is the way to do it. So we've got to find. I was also kind of astounded to hear that we've cut funding as we've cut our taxes. So I guess it kind of makes sense in a way. It says, well, we're going to have less income, so we got to spend less on schools. Schools was the biggest thing in our budget. Well, maybe if you would have explained that to me as a citizen of the state, I might not have voted for or been so happy when I got all of those tax breaks, although I don't necessarily feel all that tax break. So there was a study out there that showed the tax breaks for income and corporate in Oklahoma, corporate and income tax in Oklahoma was being cut, and it was directly proportionate to the cuts in school funding. So we may have to stop that. I'm not going to pretend that I want to pay for all this, but I don't see a way around raising my taxes a little bit. I also think our corporate partners in the state would benefit from having higher educated citizens that could come and work for them. So hopefully they would be willing to fit the bill on some of that. So the question posed, yes, we are going to have to explore raising taxes so that we can raise teacher pay and increase funding for education in Oklahoma. And the only way I can see to do it is going to be to raise taxes.